151. On changing your character. If you make disciplined, caring choices, you are slowly engraving certain tendencies into your mind. You are making it more likely that you will desire the right things and execute the right actions. If you make selfish, cruel, or disorganized choices, then you are slowly turning this core thing inside yourself into something that is degraded, inconstant, or fragmented. If you currently don't see yourself as a self-disciplined person and your desires and actions prioritize instant gratification over sacrifices that lead to bigger rewards in the future, you may feel as if there's no way you'll ever change. After all, it's been your way of doing things for a long time, and it's probably already part of your nature now. Fortunately, while your character takes time to change, it is possible to change it, with thousands of little decisions and by embracing certain thoughts over others. For example, today you may not have a tendency to desire healthy food, but rest assured that if you eat it for long enough, you will develop a desire for it. I'm speaking from my own experience. Initially I couldn't stand the taste of many vegetables, such as broccoli, Brussels sprouts, or cauliflower. As for the other vegetables, I was neutral about most of them, which meant that, given a choice between eating vegetables and something else, I'd go for something else. Today, I often crave vegetables. I no longer need to force myself to eat them. A tendency to consume them regularly is now a part of my character. This little example is only one change that was engraved in my mind after making disciplined choices over and over again. No matter which area of your life you are talking about, what now feels like a difficult act of deprivation or a sacrifice will eventually turn into something you consider essential in your life. Day 152, on the future value of money. If an item was listed at $50, consider the potential value of that same $50 after it has been invested for 20 years. Ask, is this item worth $250? If it's worth $250 to you today, then it's worth buying. Money has present and future value. At the very moment, $50 is $50. However, when invested over a long period of time, with a rate or return that exceeds inflation, it can grow several times or more. If you're struggling to maintain self-discipline with your finances, use Darren Hardy's mind trick to reduce the number of unnecessary purchases and assume that each purchase costs you 5 times more over the long term. Alternatively, think of any purchase as hours of your work. $50 is just a number that has little, if any, emotional charge. How about 2 or 3 hours of your life? Would you buy this new trinket with 2 or 3 hours of your time, instead of paying with a $50 bill? What if it's actually the same thing as losing 15 hours of your life over the long run? Is it still worth it? Day 153, on spontaneity. As he walked across the farmyard toward the hen house, he noticed the pump was leaking. So, he stopped to fix it. It needed a new washer, so he set off to the barn to get one. But on the way he saw that the hayloft needed straightening, so he went to fetch the pitchfork. Hanging next to the pitchfork was a broom with a broken handle. I must make a note to myself to buy a broom handle the next time I get to town, he thought. By now it is clear that the farmer is not going to get his eggs gathered, nor is he likely to accomplish anything else he sets out to do. He is utterly, gloriously spontaneous, but he is hardly free. He is, if anything, a prisoner to his unbridled spontaneity. The fact of the matter is that discipline is the only way to freedom, it is the necessary context for spontaneity. When you think of spontaneity, you might think of it as something positive and fun. Going on an unplanned road trip. Dancing in the rain. Saying yes to random invitations. Spontaneity can be positive, as long as you don't mistake it with impulsiveness. Whenever you justify your uninhibited behaviors with spontaneity, ask yourself if that's what it really is or whether your unplanned actions are in reality caused by a lack of self-control. Another danger you need to be aware of is when people use spontaneity to lure you in to betray your resolutions. For example, imagine you're on a diet. When you're out having fun with your friends, at midnight suddenly one of them announces that you're all going to go get some pizza. If you back out, you may be called uptight or a killjoy. At that moment, it's important to realize that your friend's accusations are unfounded because they mistake disinhibition with spontaneity. You can still be spontaneous without ruining your goals. For example, instead of eating a pizza, you can eat something less caloric, like a salad, eat just 1 or 2 small slices, or if you decide to eat the entire pizza, schedule a strenuous workout the next day, or reduce your caloric intake for a day, to burn off the excess calories. If you're wondering if self-discipline is going to make you a boring person, realize that you can make an exception from time to time, just don't do it when you're being pressured into doing it. Day 154, on the value of doing things yourself. Know the pleasure of workmanship, the joy that comes from things made well by your own hands, the happiness which comes from closer touch with the fundamental things of life and the consciousness of being of value to the world. In today's world, nobody is self-sufficient. Everybody is doing what they do best and they rely on others to satisfy their other needs and desires. Division of labor has led to prosperity, but it has also made us lazy. Whatever you want, you can buy it and get it almost instantly delivered to your door. Have a backyard? Hire a gardener to tend to it. Don't want to clean? Hire a maid. Don't have the patience to learn how to fix your sink? Call a handyman. There's nothing inherently wrong about it, and in fact, more often than not it's a smart approach. Why waste time doing something you're not good at if there are people who would be happy to take care of the problem for you? However, if you develop a habit that whenever you're facing a problem, you need to call somebody else to fix it, what will happen to your problem-solving skills? How likely will you be to keep going when problems emerge in your line of work and it will be you who will need to deal with them? Lastly, by avoiding doing things yourself, how many opportunities are you missing out on to learn something new or face a difficult situation head-on and solve it yourself? At the moment I'm writing this, I'm in the process of remodeling my apartment. I debated on hiring an interior designer to handle the entire process, design the apartment, buy materials, hire contractors, and manage it all. However, even though I could afford it, in the end I decided against it, realizing that in addition to financial savings, it was a good opportunity to learn something new. Remodeling can be a frustrating and difficult undertaking, so it can also serve as a valuable exercise in self-control. In the end, doing it myself will not only save me money, but also lead to personal growth, and that's the primary reward of doing things yourself. Week 23. Day 155, on broadening your horizons. What do you know of history, biology, evolution, ethics, and the 1001 branches of knowledge? But, you object, I fail to see how such things can aid me in the writing of a romance or a poem. Ah, but they will, not so much directly as by subtle reaction. They broaden your thought, lengthen out your vistas, drive back the bounds of the field in which you work. They give you your philosophy, which is like unto no other man's philosophy, force you to original thought. Jack London's advice is for writers who want to improve their craft, but it can also apply to any other domain. Expanding your knowledge and exposing yourself to different disciplines is not only a fantastic way to become a more educated person, but also a powerful way to become more successful. Random bits of information from one domain can help you achieve success in another. Likewise, experience gained in one field can provide the foundation for another endeavor. I'm an inquisitive person by nature and I'm always interested in learning about new things from various domains. I often randomly stumble upon powerful life lessons while learning about fields that are completely unrelated to personal development. For example, rock climbing has taught me the value of taking things one step at a time. When climbing a difficult route, you focus only on the next handhold or foothold. You slowly advance, with your vision limited to the immediate surroundings. The same approach is effective when working on your goals. Instead of worrying whether you get to the top, you focus on what's right in front of you. The experience and skills I gained when climbing are now useful to me in every other sport, and thanks to that, I can learn them more quickly. On a completely unrelated note, the experience of off-road driving has taught me the power of momentum. It's difficult to gain traction with nothing but sand under your wheels, but once you start, you can traverse difficult terrain. If you stop, it will be hard to start yet again. I don't think I need to tell you how much that applies to the world of personal development. Draw parallels between different fields and strive to always expand your knowledge. Becoming erudite can dramatically improve your ability to learn quickly and achieve success with many different endeavors. Day 156, on wanting what we already have. One wonderful way to tame our tendency to always want more is to persuade ourselves to want the things we already have. I'm a follower of intermittent fasting, a type of eating in which you regularly alternate between eating and abstaining from food. In addition to daily fasts of 16 to 20 hours, I sometimes fast for 40 hours or more. When you fast for such a long time, your senses are heightened. Smells are more intense and flavors more explosive. In this state, you learn to want things you already have. A simple apple tastes like heaven and is more than sufficient as a food source. I don't need an apple pie, a caramelized apple sprinkled with cinnamon, or apple pancakes covered with apple horseradish sauce. You can persuade yourself to want the things you have by abstaining from them for a period of time or imagining they're no longer available for you. It doesn't apply just to food. Things can disappear in a blink of an eye, including your house, car, clothes, family members, spouse, a comfortable bed, a warm shower, or your health. When you feel the threat of losing something you hold dearly, you'll start wanting it with more intensity than ever before. As a result, you'll work harder to keep it in your life and stop craving other things. The applications of this practice for self-discipline are endless and go beyond the example with fasting. Stop driving for a few days and imagine you'll always have to commute by bus or bike. Suddenly you might realize that you actually love your current car and there's no need to strain your finances and buy a new one. Imagine, and I'm sorry for the horrid mental picture, that your loved one died in a car accident right after you had an argument with them. How terrible would you feel if it was your anger, and not your expression of love, that would accompany them in their last moments? Wouldn't such a morbid reminder make you less prone to anger attacks and more likely to exert willpower to not shout at your partner, child, parent, or other loved one? In many aspects, your life is already incredible. You just need to remind yourself that you can lose it, so that you can relearn its value for you. Day 157, on remembering death. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. In the face of death, what does pride or fear of embarrassment mean? What will you regret more in your last days, not going after your goals out of a fear of failure or voluntarily putting yourself in uncomfortable situations that might result in embarrassment in exchange for eventually making your dreams come true? It's not a particularly pleasant practice to remember that you're going to die, but it can serve as a powerful reminder that, in the grand scheme of things, there's little you can lose and a lot you can gain by chasing after your dreams, and on the other hand, a lot to lose and little to gain by not shaping your life the way you want it to be just because you're afraid of failure or embarrassment. Day 158, on learning from the greats. You do not win in a big fight by any patent device. There is not any way by which you can turn your hand and conquer in a time of great trial. You have got to conquer as your fathers and grandfathers conquered before you. You have got to conquer as strong men have conquered in every struggle of history, and draw on whatever fund of courage, of resolution, of hardihood, of iron will that you have at your command, and you can conquer only if you draw on just those qualities. Whatever problems you're facing today, somebody has already faced them in the past. Perhaps not in the exact same way as you, but close enough that the story of this person will resonate with you. That's why I find biographies, particularly autobiographies, so inspirational. you're getting to know the stories of great individuals and discover that no matter what period of history they took place in, people always employed the same or similar ways to achieve success. What's so powerful about it is that you can apply their lessons in your own life and have a reasonable chance that if it worked for them, it will work for you. It might sound like I'm opposed to the use of self-help literature. Obviously I'm not, otherwise I wouldn't write my books, but I strongly believe that you're often better served by reading biographies of people you want to emulate, rather than yet another generic book about personal development. And yes, you have my blessing to close this book now, if you have a good biography waiting for you on the bookshelf. Here are some biographies I strongly recommend, listed in no particular order. 1. Losing My Virginity in Finding My Virginity by Richard Branson. 2. Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. 3. Elon Musk by Ashley Vance. 4. How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big by Scott Adams. 5. On Writing by Stephen King. 6. How to Get Rich by Felix Dennis. 7. Let My People Go Surfing by Yvonne Chouinard. Day 159, on having options. Always have options. Options are a primary source of power. Here's an easy way to sabotage yourself: limit your thinking to black or white. It's either A or B. You either do it or you don't. Having only two options takes away your power to choose and makes you susceptible to decision avoidance. This, in turn, makes you less likely to introduce important changes in your life. Rarely, if ever, are there only two options. For example, let's imagine you're now working 9 to 5, but you'd like to become an entrepreneur. Black or white thinking makes you believe that you only have two options: keep your job or give notice and start your business. With only two opposite directions to choose from, you can't make it any harder for you to decide. What about continuing your career while building a side business? How about asking your boss if you can work from your home office? What about changing your form of employment to become a contractor instead of an employee? What about finding a job in a startup that is looking for a co-founder with your experience? Suddenly you have other options, and those options can empower you to introduce a change instead of having to choose between the status quo and making an irresponsible decision. Whenever you catch yourself thinking that you only have two options, think again. Black or white thinking is mental laziness. Always find at least one more alternative and give yourself a better chance of making the right decision. Day 160, on deliberate practice. Doing things we know how to do well is enjoyable, and that's exactly the opposite of what deliberate practice demands. Instead of doing what we're good at, we insistently seek out what we're not good at. Then we identify the painful, difficult activities that will make us better and do those things over and over. After each repetition, we force ourselves to see, or get others to tell us, exactly what still isn't right so we can repeat the most painful and difficult parts of what we've just done. Concentrating on what you aren't good at instead of exclusively doing what you do well can dramatically speed up your progress rate, particularly in a complex endeavor that has many moving pieces. It's tempting to stick to doing what you're good at and ignore the rest. It feels enjoyable, and if it's a skill you can show off to others, that's another reason to stick to what you do well. However, ultimately you can find little growth in repeating, over and over again, what you've already mastered, while other aspects of your performance leave something to be desired. For example, in rock climbing, one of my weaknesses is climbing routes that rely heavily on finger strength. I could choose to ignore any routes of this nature, but doing so would mean dramatically slowing down my progress, if not bringing it to a halt. Even though it gives me great pleasure to climb routes with easier handholds, and climbing the ones requiring finger strength is often a nightmare, I know that ultimately, it's the uncomfortable routes that will make me a better climber. Focusing on your strengths and ignoring or bypassing what you aren't good at is a form of instant gratification. Meanwhile, identifying the painful, difficult activities that will address your weaknesses requires sacrifice, but ultimately leads to bigger rewards in the future. Go with the latter. Day 161, on addressing the real mistakes. When expert putters miss, they don't say, "I am a terrible putter." They say, I picked the wrong target. Proclaiming that you suck simply because you made a mistake is not only being unfair to yourself. You also rob yourself of the opportunity to improve, and increase the risk of developing learned helplessness. Learning can't happen if you believe that improvement is beyond your control. Yet, that's precisely what you're doing when you're pointing the finger at yourself instead of at a specific action that you took. Imagine an instructor who tells their student that they're a terrible tennis player. What does such kind of feedback accomplish besides demotivating the student? The only effective way to teach is to deliver specific feedback pertaining to a concrete aspect of their game, not by criticizing the person playing it. Do what expert putters do. Instead of wrongly criticizing yourself, address the real mistakes in the form of specific actions you took that didn't result in the desired outcome. Week 24. Day 162, on inverse paranoia. Inverse paranoid, someone who believes the world is conspiring to do him good. Sees every situation as being heaven sent to teach some valuable lesson or make him successful. This is the most outwardly identifiable quality of a high-performing person. Cognitive reframing is a process in which you change the meaning of a difficulty, hardship, or failure and give it a positive slant. For example, if you were injured during a workout, you can think of it as the worst thing that could have happened to you, or you can reframe it by looking at it as an opportunity to recharge and focus on performing the exercise more safely in the future, perhaps preventing an even worse injury by doing so. If you cheated while on a diet, you can think of it as a stupid move on your part. However, it would be better to look at it as a lesson by asking yourself why, where, and when it happened, and what you can do to avoid doing it again in the future. If you're ready to take cognitive reframing to the extreme, and I strongly recommend you do so, develop what Brian Tracy calls inverse paranoia, the belief that the world is conspiring to do you good and that everything that happens to you contributes to your success. Living with such a mindset not only makes you happier, it also makes you more mentally resilient, because you know that everything happens for a good reason, and consequently, less likely to become discouraged and give up. Day 163, on angry comebacks. Never respond to an angry person with a fiery comeback, even if he deserves it. Don't allow his anger to become your anger. Anger is one of the most infectious emotions. When somebody attacks them verbally, for many people the urge to offer a nasty, angry comeback is so overpowering that they do it automatically. Before you know it, you're engaged in a verbal fight. Working on controlling your anger can provide great benefits. When it comes to strengthening your impulse control, every time somebody attacks you, resist the temptation to engage in a fight by either finding something funny about the situation, deflecting the attack, for example by thanking the attacker for expressing their opinion, which might then strike you as humorous, or if those are not possible, walking away from the situation. Remember that in the grand scheme of things you gain nothing, and risk a lot, by responding with a fiery comeback. As good as venting feels at that moment, losing your temper is not worth it when you consider the potential longer-term cost, such as losing your job, your reputation, a key relationship, or even just ruining your mood for the entire day. Refusing to respond with anger is a simple exercise, but not easy. And that's why, combined with the fact that most of us deal with aggressive people at least once a week, it can be a valuable opportunity for you to increase your self-control when interacting with others. As a bonus quote for today, ponder the words of Hazrat Inayat Khan. Very often in everyday life one sees that by losing one's temper with someone who has already lost his, one does not gain anything but only sets out upon the path of stupidity. He who has enough self-control to stand firm at the moment when the other person is in a temper, wins in the end. It is not he who has spoken 100 words aloud who has won, it is he who has perhaps spoken only one word. Day 164, on easing yourself into the pain. One painful duty fulfilled makes the next plainer and easier. If you have a few unpleasant tasks to perform and you have no idea where to start, begin with the least unpleasant task to ease yourself into the pain, so to speak. Once you cross off the first task, working on the next task, even if it's more painful than the first one, should be easier because you'll be warmed up, carried forward by the positive momentum. It's like taking a brief, 10-second cold shower prior to jumping into a cold swimming pool, something I used to do when I was a regular at my local swimming pool. You've already exhibited some self-control, warmed yourself up for discomfort. I know, warming yourself up isn't really a good choice of words here, and now the more unpleasant act of submerging your body in cold water should be easier. After all, you've already taken the first step and gained some momentum. If even the least unpleasant task on your list is still so overwhelming that you don't want to get to it, warm yourself up to discomfort by doing virtually anything else that's slightly uncomfortable, such as doing the dishes, performing a quick set of squats, or cleaning your desk. This way, you'll slowly transition from being comfortable into being a bit less comfortable, and eventually, into the unpleasant task you need to perform. Day 165, on not living up to your ideals. Our behavior sometimes falls short of our ideals not because we're bad people and not because our self-interest outweighs our benevolence, but because we don't realize we're not living up to our ideals. Self-awareness is an important part of the process of making any change. If you don't pay enough attention to your actions, you won't be able to ensure that you live up to your ideals. Each week, perform a quick review. Ask yourself if your actions during the past week were congruent with your ideals, values, and goals. For example, if my goal is to become a calmer, more understanding person, each week, or each day, I'll ask myself if I exuded those emotions or let myself go, and in both cases, specifically when I did so, and how and why. Knowing when you make mistakes will help you avoid them in the future, and encourage further improvement. Don't focus on mistakes alone, though. For motivational purposes, it's also important to think about when you did live up to your ideals and feel proud of your progress. Implement self-monitoring and periodic reviews in your routine, and you'll increase your chances of making a new change stick. If you don't evaluate your behavior, you'll make everything harder. Day 166, on handling emotions. People with a strong physical constitution can tolerate extremes of hot and cold. People of strong mental health can handle anger, grief, joy, and the other emotions. While people usually associate self-discipline with the ability to resist temptations, such as laziness or overeating, another equally, if not more, important benefit of self-control is the increased ability to control your emotions. Both negative and positive feelings make our lives more exciting, but they can also jeopardize our long-term goals if we let them influence our behavior too much. For example, if you're impatient and tend to rush things, one wrong, emotionally motivated decision can destroy the progress of many months or years. A more disciplined approach to impatience, recognizing the difference between when the emotion can actually inspire positive change and when it's a sign of dissatisfaction with something you can't control, would serve you more than letting impatience dictate all of your behaviors. Positive emotions, as pleasant as they feel, can also affect you negatively. For example, being overjoyed with your results carries the danger of self-congratulation and subsequent complacency, which places you at risk of losing the habits that you had to develop to reach that success. A more disciplined approach to joy, expressing your happiness and gratitude for your success, and then reminding yourself that you still have a lot to learn and promptly looking for another challenge, would serve you more than jumping from joy and assuming that now that you've accomplished your goal, you're a world-class expert and now nothing will ever stand in your way. Be vigilant of both your positive and negative emotions and understand the risk they can carry with them when left unchecked. Day 167, on routines overcoming a bad mood. A solid routine fosters a well-worn groove for one's mental energies and helps stave off the tyranny of moods. I'm a big proponent of daily routines, not only because they ensure that you steadily advance toward your goal, but also because they reduce the likelihood of negative moods ruining your progress. Let's not fool ourselves, we're humans, and sometimes we feel bad. If you don't have a daily routine and wake up in a bad mood, it's almost certain that you won't care much about your current resolutions and forego them for the rest of the day. Handling your negative mood will be more important than any other objectives you might have had. However, if you've established a daily routine and it's now instilled in your mind, the risk that you won't perform it is much lower. Why is that so? Because the beautiful thing about a daily routine is that once it's automatic, you feel bad when you don't do it. This means that if you're in a bad mood, not performing your routine will make you feel even worse, so the best choice is to stick to your routine in spite of your bad mood. When setting important long-term goals, also create daily routines that will steadily move you toward achieving them. Once established, they will be some of your biggest allies. Day 168, on wasting your energy when you don't have important rituals. There is no more miserable human being than one in whom nothing is habitual but indecision, and for whom the lighting of every cigar, the drinking of every cup, the time of rising and going to bed every day, and the beginning of every bit of work, are subjects of express volitional deliberation. Full half the time of such a man goes to the deciding, or regretting, of matters which ought to be so ingrained in him as practically not to exist for his consciousness at all. Continuing on the topic of routines that we discussed yesterday, the more routines you have, particularly routines for the most important parts of the day, the more time and energy you have for making decisions. Many top performers follow specific routines, but they all differ wildly. For example, Pablo Picasso worked between 3 p.m. and 2 a.m., with a 1-hour break at 10 p.m., while Victor Hugo spent most of his day on leisure, except for a 2-hour writing session between 6 and 8 p.m. Benjamin Franklin woke up at 5 in the morning, while Pablo Picasso didn't wake up until 11 a.m. This demonstrates that what's most important is not following somebody else's specific routine, but following some kind of a routine that fits your personality. At a minimum, develop at least 3 routines in your life that will eliminate indecision and improve your control of the day. 1. When you wake up and when you go to bed. Life is unpredictable and things will happen, but you can choose your working hours and ensure a highly predictable weekly schedule. 2. What you do in the morning to ensure a good day's start. Discover what types of mornings usually lead to happy, productive days and repeat the same actions daily. 3. When you work. Most applicable to entrepreneurs and other people with flexible work schedule. If you don't have a flexible schedule, at least dedicate a set period of the day for the most important part of your work. Week 25. Day 169, on stopping at the right moment to help you tomorrow. The best way is always to stop when you are going good and when you know what will happen next. If you do that every day when you are writing a novel, you will never be stuck. That is the most valuable thing I can tell you, so try to remember it. One simple trick a writer can use to help him or her resume writing the next day is to stop in the middle of a sentence that leads to a clear conclusion. This way, when they sit down to write the next time, there won't be any writer's block. They can gain momentum right away by finishing the sentence. This advice can be helpful for non-writers, too. Each day when you're finishing your work, leave an easy, unimportant task half finished so that you can immediately begin to work on it the next day with little to no resistance. If you're reading a book about an important skill you want to learn, stop in the middle of an easy chapter, not a difficult one. If you want to improve your nutritional habits but your busyness often leads you to eat less than healthy breakfasts, prepare a small, healthy breakfast the evening before. Make it easy for you to resume your activity the next day, and you'll rarely, if ever, struggle to get started. Day 170, on supply and demand. Supply and demand, the more people do something, the less valuable it is. An often overlooked benefit of self-discipline is that it's a rare trait. Consequently, it makes you a more valuable employee when compared to your lazy colleagues, a more respected boss when compared to a boss who demands a lot from others but not from themselves, or a more trustworthy business partner when compared to a person who doesn't mind cutting corners. Since self-discipline is so hard to attain, there will always be more demand than supply. This can indirectly lead to more opportunities and a better financial situation. If you still find it hard to resist temptations, emotions often get the best of you, and you can't overcome the allure of instant gratification, try to give self-discipline a monetary value. The fact that you're becoming more productive, thanks to more self-discipline, increases your chances of being promoted at work. More self-discipline means that you'll improve more quickly at a skill that you plan to monetize soon. And if you're an entrepreneur, it directly affects how much income you generate. It probably sounds ridiculous to suggest that you can become a more self-disciplined person by linking self-discipline with higher income, but can you deny that money is a powerful motivator for many people? If I were to give you $100,000 if you eliminated 3 bad habits from your life, I'm pretty sure that no matter how many times you had failed to get rid of them before, this time you'd succeed. Think of self-discipline in the same category as any other skill or credential you could list on your resume or in a sales brochure. It doesn't cost anything, other than your time and energy, to develop this ability, and the return on this investment can be higher than any other lucrative endeavor you might pursue. Day 171, on stress. Stress, including negative emotions like anger, sadness, self-doubt, and anxiety, shifts the brain into a reward-seeking state. You end up craving whatever substance or activity your brain associates with the promise of reward, and you become convinced that the reward is the only way to feel better. There are 2 types of stress: distress, which is negative stress in the common usage of this word, and eustress, the good type of stress in which you respond to stress with healthy, positive feelings, for example, during an athletic competition or riding a roller coaster. Distress, and particularly chronic distress, is one of the biggest enemies of willpower. When you're under stress, your ability to withstand pressure diminishes. This means that you can no longer exhibit the same kind of mental toughness and self-discipline as when you're your normal self. It's like expecting your car, to have the same acceleration when there's a semi-truck, stress, attached to it. As Kelly McGonigal notes, stress puts you into a reward-seeking state where your priority ceases to be about personal growth, such as overcoming a temptation, and becomes all about gaining comfort, often at the expense of your long-term goals. And it makes a lot of sense. Why would a person who's stressed out seek more stressors? Chronically elevated levels of stress will not only have a negative effect on your health and well-being, but also on your entire life. If you often get stressed, make it your priority to relax daily, even if it's just 5 minutes of cuddling with your partner, reading a book, or taking a short walk. In addition to that, avoid setting any new challenges for your willpower and conserve your energy when you're going through a tough period. It's better to deal with the stress first and then, having recovered, focus on personal growth yet again, than it is to put too much burden on your shoulders and collapse under the weight. Day 172, on having more than one identity. Those who gain their sense of identity from many areas are more resilient when failing in any one area. For example, a professional tennis player is more likely to be upset by losing a match than is an amateur player for whom tennis is only one of many activities in the week. If you define yourself by only one role, an entrepreneur, a surfer, a writer, or a pianist, your self-image might be heavily dependent on your performance in this role. This can make you incapable of effectively processing big failures in that area. For this reason, it's good to define yourself by at least several roles. Then, even when you fail in one domain, there will still be other areas in which your performance might still inspire hope and help you recover from the failure in that other thing. For example, if I have a bad day when rock climbing, it won't affect my well-being very much if I'm still doing well as a writer or have recently improved my language skills or strengthened a key relationship. If I considered myself exclusively a rock climber, each failure would crush me. How many roles do you have? How many of them affect your self-image? If you have only 1 or 2 defining roles, consider adding an additional identity or 2. That way, you'll disperse any negative emotions over several domains and improve your ability to quickly bounce back from any failure in one of them. Day 173, on eating alone. Meals eaten with one other person present were 33% larger than meals eaten alone, whereas 47%, 58%, 69%, 70%, 72%, and 96% increases were associated with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 or more people present, respectively. Here's a super simple way to improve your self-control when eating: eat alone. When people eat with others, they eat more, and the greater the number of people who share the meal with you, the more you eat. However, studies suggest that this phenomenon isn't related to the amount of time spent eating. It's the companionship in itself that makes humans more likely to eat more when they are around other people than when alone. The same happens with animals. With chickens, for example, a full chicken will continue eating if a hungry chicken starts eating with it. If you're currently on a diet and you frequently have a bite with other people, ask yourself how important it is for you to spend time eating with them. Perhaps you could forego or reduce the number of shared meals while you're on a diet and find a different activity that you could do together. Sometimes such simple tweaks can quickly produce big results, so give it a go for at least a few weeks and see whether it can help you achieve your goals more quickly. Day 174, on experiencing life. Accept what life offers you and try to drink from every cup. All wines should be tasted, some should only be sipped, but with others, drink the whole bottle. While this book and most of my other books glorify self-discipline and make it sound like the most important thing in the world, I don't want you to think that a life of deprivation is the right one. In fact, I believe that unless you espouse self-discipline in a healthy way, it might be close to impossible to maintain it in the long haul. However, what is a healthy approach to self-discipline? It's the attitude that self-discipline exists to support you in your goals, but it shouldn't prevent you from fully experiencing life. For example, I'm now on an overseas trip. While I'm still largely following my routine by waking up early and working in the morning, I also make exceptions. I work less, my diet is not as strict, and I allow myself to be lazier. I'm still working towards some goals, but I put some on a temporary hold. I can always work on them later, while pushing myself now would mean that I wouldn't be able to experience the trip to the fullest and recharge my batteries. I want you to be as self-disciplined as possible, but I don't want you to skip eating spaghetti, pizza, or ice cream while in Italy, avoid eating a piece of birthday cake at your best friend's party, or to not enjoy sunny weather and goof off at the beach every now and then. However, as the quote from Paulo Coelho says, please note that you should experience some things only a little, while others are there to be enjoyed to the fullest. There are also experiences that you can skip without any regrets. For example, you don't have to take hard drugs to know that it's a bad idea, while indulging in unhealthy food every now and then, ideally when celebrating something with your loved ones, isn't that bad. Lastly, don't treat it as a permission to cheat. You shouldn't go on a trip while in the middle of your diet just so you can indulge in unhealthy food or get lazy because it's sunny outside while you have an urgent job to do. Accept with welcoming hands what life has to offer, but make sure that you drink from the right cups, and in the right amount, not too little, and not too much. Day 175, on improving self-control by using your other hand. Using the mouse, stirring your coffee, opening doors. This requires people to practice self-control because their habitual tendency is to use their dominant hands. One interesting exercise to improve your self-control is to start using your other hand for the things you usually do with your dominant one. For example, use your non-dominant hand for brushing your teeth, pouring drinks into a cup, washing yourself, doing the dishes, opening jars, stirring coffee, or opening doors. Psychologist Thomas Denson had people use their non-dominant hand for 2 weeks for any task that was safe to do that way. After 2 weeks, people in the group using the non-dominant hand controlled their aggression better. What does it have to do with self-control? It's because aggression, or virtually any other thing you control by exerting self-discipline, is an impulse. Just like you automatically open doors with your dominant hand, so do you impulsively reply with anger, grab a cookie, or choose the elevator instead of the stairs. Conscious change in your automatic behaviors, such as intentionally using your non-dominant hand, can then help you improve your ability to control impulses, and by extension, make you more self-disciplined. I know, it's a wild theory, but why not try it? Even if it only produces small improvements, it's still a fun experiment. Week 26. Day 176, on jotting things down. The palest ink is more reliable than the most powerful memory. It's all fine and dandy to tell yourself that you're going to achieve this and that goal. However, in the end, our memories are fickle. You can forget about some goals, or stop working on them simply because they were never real in the first place. you've never written them down, so they only existed in your head, and if something is only in your head, you can conveniently make it disappear without a trace or simply forget it without intending to. Develop a habit of writing down your goals, even if it's only one sentence or two. Thanks to the habit of tracking your goals on paper, you'll look at your objectives as real-world resolutions and not just mere ideas floating through your head that you can disregard whenever you feel like doing so. It's more difficult to do the same if your goals are written, because erasing them, regardless if it's by deleting a text file or tearing up a piece of paper, will make it painfully clear that you're giving up on them. In addition to writing down your goals, write down specific routines that you plan to follow in order to achieve them. For example, for this book, I have a spreadsheet in which I note down how many daily entries I write each day. That way, I can hold myself accountable and compare my performance today to that of the past. Moreover, it makes it clear to me how close I am to achieving my goal, and all of that boosts my motivation to keep going. It also lets me see if things are going as planned and if the plan itself needs revision in order to improve the results. Day 177, on sleep. Good sleep habits could refuel a person's ability to make more difficult choices instead of opting for the easier choice or the easier task. Sleep is one of the needs that you can't control no matter how self-disciplined you are. You can choose to go without food for a few days and you'll be fine. If you've been going without sleep for, say, 48 hours, even in a situation like driving, when falling asleep means certain death, you still won't be able to control it. For this reason, sleep is king and you should do all in your power to ensure that you have a good night's sleep. Studies show that a lack of or poor sleep can negatively affect self-control. I don't think I need to cite research to convince you that it's true. You probably have plenty of empiric evidence from your own life, and so do I. If you're half asleep the entire day, your only priority will be to go to sleep as quickly as possible. Who cares about dieting, exercise, money, etc. if they can barely think straight, their mental capacity reduced to zero? There are several key things you can do to improve your sleep. 1. Make sure you have a comfortable mattress. Most mattresses should be replaced at least every 10 years. 2. Make sure you sleep in silence. Any noise will dramatically reduce the sleep quality. Use earplugs if there's no way to soundproof your bedroom. 3. Make sure you sleep in the right temperature. The most beneficial temperature for sleep is 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 to 19 Celsius. 4. Make sure you reduce the amount of blue light you receive in the evening, especially during the last hour before you want to be asleep. This means not using electronics before sleep, and if not possible, as is the case for most of us, put on blue-blocking goggles and make sure to expose yourself to bright light during the day. 5. Make sure your racing mind is asleep. If you have any lingering thoughts, write them down and resume thinking about them the next day. You won't have to revisit them during the time you should be sleeping because you will have written them down. 6. Make sure you don't consume caffeine when it's less than 6 hours prior to sleep. It takes 3 to 7 hours for caffeine to metabolize. Caffeine-induced sleep disorder is a real thing, and even if you can fall asleep after drinking tea or coffee, it doesn't mean your sleep is of high quality. 7. Make sure you don't consume a big meal prior to going to sleep. Give your body at least 2 hours after eating before you go to sleep. Day 178, on losing momentum. No matter what your goal/project, never allow yourself to miss 2 days in a row. Momentum will carry you forward almost automatically for as long as you stick to your resolutions every day. Missing 1 day every now and then isn't that dangerous, but if it's 2 or more days without any action taken to get you closer to your goal, the risk of giving up on your goal dramatically increases. What I've found from my personal experience is that you don't necessarily have to always stick to your resolutions exactly as they are stated. If, for example, you have a goal to write 1,000 words a day and for a weekend you can only write 100 words each day, you should still be able to resume your regular routine on Monday easily. If, however, you skip writing altogether, resuming your routine will be much more challenging. The same happens with exercise, where even a super brief 5-minute workout will still be better than not exercising at all, or when changing your nutritional habits, where adding even one tiny vegetable to your plate is better than only eating junk food. Whenever you find yourself in a situation where it's hard to stick to your goals, take one full day off if you need it, but on the next day perform at least one tiny action associated with your goal. That way you'll still maintain some momentum and ensure that it will be easier to resume your regular routine when you're ready. Day 179, on effort generating satisfaction. We like sitting in a garden but don't want to get sweaty in dirty digging up a garden space or mowing the lawn, so we pay a gardener to cut the grass and plant some flowers. We want to enjoy a nice meal, but shopping and cooking are too much trouble, so we eat out or just pop something into the microwave. Sadly, in surrendering our effort in these activities, we gain relaxation, but we may actually give up a lot of deep enjoyment. It's often effort that ultimately creates long-term satisfaction. On day 154 we discussed the value of doing things yourself. We focused on the fact that resisting the temptation to delegate everything can help you learn new things and ultimately grow as a person. Today I'd like to approach this subject from another perspective, that effort leads to long-term satisfaction. By choosing what now feels like a choice that maximizes your happiness, delegating the work, not only do you miss potential opportunities to learn, but you also lose the positive feelings you can get from expending the effort yourself. As I've already stated, it's not possible for most people to do everything themselves. However, whenever you can afford to do so, overcome your laziness and inertia, exert some willpower and, instead of having somebody else do something for you, do it yourself. Yes, in the beginning it probably won't feel as nice as the relaxation you could get from somebody else handling it for you, but in the end the expended effort will probably make you happier. This will also improve your ability to discipline yourself instead of defaulting to delegating the work to others. Day 180, on paying the price as fast as possible. No matter how long a situation continues, there's always a way to get out. But the sooner you handle it, the easier it is. Whenever I choose to pay in advance. But if I become aware of a mistake, I want to pay the price as fast as possible and clear the record. I've become fanatically intolerant of permanent irritants. Small irritating things tend to grow into bigger problems the longer you let them continue. Moreover, the longer the situation continues, the more difficult it is to resolve it. For this reason, it's important to develop a habit of paying the price as fast as possible. Engage in something a little unpleasant today to resolve the situation before it gets worse and more difficult to handle. To share an example with you, there was a time when I used to carry a large textile bag and a duffel bag for each outdoors climbing session. I was too lazy to take my climbing gear out of my gym bag and put it into a travel backpack that was more suitable for transportation between one crag and another. I used to complain about it, but I didn't do anything about the situation because it was only a small irritant. Usually, it didn't take more than a couple of minutes to access the crag, so it wasn't a big deal to carry the gear this way. Then one sector required a 20-minute walk on a hiking path with steep declines and inclines. I quickly discovered how stupid and uncomfortable it was to carry climbing gear in something other than a backpack. On the next occasion, I overcame my laziness and put my climbing gear into a backpack. It took me just a few minutes to repack my things, and now I could comfortably walk from one crag to another. Paying the price as fast as possible, the first time I realized there was a problem, would have helped me avoid unnecessary discomfort. This and other similar lessons have taught me that it's best to act as soon as you realize that there's a problem or an unpleasant thing to do. Use your self-control to handle any irritants, no matter how small they might be, right away. You'll not only get rid of the problem, you'll also exercise your willpower muscle each time you decide to act immediately instead of postponing it.